Welcome back, everyone, to Calm Coding. This is our weekly deep dive where we really try to unpack the cybersecurity news that matters most.
Yep, cutting through the noise.
Exactly. We know you're busy, maybe coding, maybe just trying to keep things secure online. So we aim to give you the key insights, without getting bogged down in overly technical stuff.
Hmm.
This week, our sources are, well, they're all over the map. Malware, supply chains, even government policy shifts.
It's been quite a week.
It really has. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. Break down these key events from the past week, figure out what you need to know, and why it's actually relevant.
It's definitely a dynamic field, like you said,
Yeah.
and the last few days they've really shown that. We're seeing threats that are not just technically complex, but also really quite clever in how they sneak into our systems.
Okay, let's get into it then. One of the more, I guess, unsettling stories involves some really nasty wiper malware found hiding in Go modules on GitHub.
Right, the Go ecosystem.
Yeah, and these weren't just, standard bits of bad code. These things were built specifically to wipe Linux servers clean. Just overwrite everything with zeros.
It's like a digital scorched earth policy. It's pretty brutal. And what makes it worse is how they disguise themselves.
Exactly. They were mimicking legitimate projects' names like Proto-Transform, GoMCP, Tilsproxy, things developers might actually search for.
Yeah, that's the type of squatting danger right there. It really shines a light on the trust we place in package managers and open source repos. You have to wonder, what more can the tooling itself do to help developers spot these fakes?
That's a huge question. And this malware, once it got running, it didn't hang about, checked if it was on Linux, and bam, started overwriting the disk.
Instant destruction.
The researchers at SLAAC who found it said the actual wiping code was highly obfuscated, basically scrambled to make it hard to spot.
Hiding in plain sight almost.
GitHub took them down fast once Socket let them know, which is good. But man, it makes you double-check your dependencies, doesn't it? Even in places you generally trust.
It really does. It hammers home the challenge of supply chain security. We focus so much on our own code, but the stuff we pull in from outside, that's a massive attack surface.
And the Go ecosystem's flexibility, while great for developers, can kind of be a double-edged sword here if you're not super careful vetting what you use.
Absolutely. Vigilance is key.
Okay, shifting gears but sticking with supply chains, Magento, the e-commerce platform. Big news there, too.
Oh yeah, the SANSEC findings. That was quite something.
Right. They found 21 backdoored Magento extensions, 21, from vendors like Tigran, Mitanshi, MSG.
And the really sneaky part, some of this malicious code was apparently planted way back in 2019.
I know, just sitting there dormant like a sleeper agent until it got activated in April this year. Crazy.
It shows real patience from the attackers. They compromised these extensions, got them distributed through official vendor channels, and potentially hit hundreds of sites, including, apparently, a major multinational.
And how'd they do it?
Relatively simple, but effective. They basically slipped a PHP backdoor into the license check file of the extensions. That gave them remote code execution.
Which means game over, potentially. Access to customer data, financial info.
Everything you don't want exposed. The lifeblood of an online store, like you said earlier.
And what's worrying, too, is hearing about how some of the vendors responded, apparently quite dismissively in some cases.
Yeah, the responses seemed varied, which isn't ideal.
So the message for anyone running a Magento store, especially if you use extensions from, say, Tigran or Mitanshi or MGS, check this list. Check your systems now.
Absolutely critical. Don't wait. Secure your assets. It's a reminder to audit third-party code constantly, not just your own stuff.
Right. Keep things updated, vet your plugins, have an incident plan. It's not optional anymore.
It's essential hygiene.
Okay, let's get a bit more technical. IPv6. There's this Chinese threat group, TheWizards. They've been seen running these IPv6 SLAAC spoofing attacks.
Ah, yes, SLAAC spoofing. It sounds complicated, but the concept is fairly direct.
Break it down for us. What's SLAAC again?
So, SLAAC is stateless address auto-configuration. It's how IPv6 devices can automatically get network settings, like an IP address and the gateway router, without needing a central DHCP server like an IPv4.
Okay, makes sense. So how are the wizards messing with it?
They're using a tool they apparently call Spellbinder. It sends out fake router advertisement messages, RAs. These messages basically lie to devices on the network, saying, hey, I'm your gateway router.
Ah, so they're impersonating the real router, like putting up a fake road sign.
Exactly. If a device trusts that fake RA, it sends all its internet traffic through the attacker system instead of the legitimate gateway. A man-in-the-middle position, essentially.
Clever. And once they have that traffic,
They can intercept things. Specifically, they look for DNS requests for software update domains. Think Tencent, Baidu, Xiaomi, popular stuff, especially in Asia.
and then redirect them.
Precisely. They redirect the victim to download a malicious Trojanized update instead of the real one. This update installs their backdoor called WizardNet.
And WizardNet lets them do what?
Remote access, basically. They can steal data, run commands, see what processes are running, maintain persistence on the system.
Nasty stuff. And who are they targeting?
She's focused on China, Hong Kong, Cambodia, the Philippines, UAE, often organizations in the gambling sector, according to ESET's research.
So what's the defense here if you're worried about this?
Well, monitoring your IPv6 traffic for unusual RA messages is one thing. Or, frankly, if your organization doesn't actively need IPv6 right now, disabling it on endpoints can just remove that attack vector entirely.
Reduce the attack surface. Makes sense. It shows how attackers are always probing, looking for weaknesses in protocols we might not think about every day.
Constantly evolving tactics.
Okay, let's switch it up. Nvidia. We know them for GPUs, AI chips, but now they're making a bigger play in cybersecurity.
Yeah, with something called DOCA Argus.
Yeah.
It's a software framework aimed squarely at protecting AI infrastructure in real time.
AI factories, as they call them. Interesting term.
It is. And the approach is interesting, too. Argus runs on their BlueField networking hardware DPUs, data processing units. The key thing is it runs off-host.
Meaning it doesn't run on the main servers doing the AI work.
Exactly. So it can monitor and react to threats without stealing CPU cycles from the, really demanding AI computations. The goal is autonomous detection and response.
And it plays nice with existing security tools. SIEMs, RR platforms.
That's the claim. It's designed to integrate, not necessarily replace. They're also talking up faster detection using memory forensics, which is potentially quite powerful.
And they're training it on their own data.
Right, using Nvidia's internal security telemetry to try and cut down on false alarms, which is always a big challenge in security monitoring.
And they're working with Cisco on this too, a secure AI factory.
Yeah, a collaboration there. It definitely signals Nvidia seeing a specific need to secure these increasingly critical and valuable AI systems.
It feels like a trend, hardware companies getting deeper into security tied to their specific tech.
It does, leveraging their unique position. Security baked in rather than bolted on, especially for these high-performance, complex environments.
Makes sense. Okay, let's talk policy. The U.S. Department of Defense, they're looking at shaking up how they buy software.
Yeah, the SWFT initiative Software Fast Track, they're calling their current systems outdated.
Main goals seem to be boosting security and getting a better handle on their software supply chain, which feels very relevant given our earlier chats.
Absolutely. SWFT is supposed to define clearer cybersecurity requirements, supply chain risk management, SCRM needs, verification processes, the whole lot.
Oh, what caught my eye was their language around open source software.
Yeah. They explicitly called it a significant and ongoing challenge.
Why? What's the specific concern?
Primarily, lack of visibility. Not always knowing exactly where all the code comes from, who contributed, what their security practices were. Concerns about malware being slipped in or vulnerabilities exposed through partner leaks.
It does create a contrast, right? We just talked about malicious Go modules on GitHub and open source or repo, but open source also drives so much innovation.
It's the classic tension, especially for an organization like the DoD with incredibly high security stakes. They also mentioned, kind of briefly, this DOGE initiative saving $6 billion.
Yeah, it seemed like a side note, maybe just indicating a push for efficiency and scrutiny overall.
Could be. But the open source stance is definitely interesting. It highlights that ongoing debate. How do you balance the benefits of open collaboration with the need for rock-solid security assurance, especially for critical systems?
A tough balancing act for sure. Okay, let's swing back to direct threats. Darcula sounds ominous.
It is. It's a phishing as a service kit. Face.
And the scale sounds pretty massive. Helped steal nearly 1 million credit cards in about 7 months.
Staggering numbers. Around 600 operators apparently used this kit. They generated something like 13 million clicks on malicious links.
Wow. And how are they distributing these links?
Mostly text messages. But here's the kicker. They're focusing heavily on mobile platforms, Android and iOS, and using things like RCS and iMessage.
Ah, the richer messaging services, not just basic SMS. Why is that significant?
Well, those messages can also look more legitimate, more feature-rich. They might bypass some traditional SMS filters, and people might just trust them more.
Sneaky.
Yeah,
And the kit itself is pretty advanced.
seems so. It can apparently spin up phishing kits automatically for lots of different brands, and even uses generative AI to write the phishing messages in multiple languages. Makes global targeting much easier.
So it's lowering the barrier to entry for sophisticated phishing, and
Mhm.
the operators seem to be Chinese.
That's the indication.
Yeah.
It really highlights how mobile is the primary phishing battleground now. You hear stats like over 80% of phishing sites target mobile. It feels right.
Yeah, we get good at spotting dodgy emails on our laptops, but maybe we're less cautious tapping links on our phones.
It's easy to do. So the advice, sadly, remains the same, but it's more important than ever. Be skeptical, especially of urgent messages or unexpected links. Think before you tap.
Good reminder, always. Okay, another one here involving patching or lack thereof. Samsung Magic Info
All
Server.
right, this is a content management system, often used for those big digital signs you see everywhere.
There was a vulnerability, a remote code execution one, CVE 2024-7399. It was patched back in August 2024.
But it's being actively exploited now.
That's the frustrating part, isn't it? The fix exists, but if it's not applied.
Exactly. It's a classic problem.
Yeah.
Attackers have a public proof of concept exploit now. They could just send an unauthenticated POST request, meaning they don't need login details to upload malicious files, specifically .jsp files.
And that lets them run their own code on the server.
Yep. Deploy malware, take control of the signage system, potentially pivot further into the network.
So for anyone running Samsung Magic Info 9 server,
The message is loud and clear. Patch immediately. Update to version 21.1050 or apply the specific patch if you haven't already. Don't leave that door open.
patching isn't glamorous, but it's fundamental.
Absolutely critical.
Okay, a more serious one impacting healthcare now. Masimo Corporation, the medical device maker.
Yeah. They confirmed a cyber attack hit their internal on-premise network back at the end of April.
Do we know if it was ransomware?
They haven't confirmed that yet. The investigation's ongoing. But it's definitely caused major disruption. Some manufacturing facilities crippled, order fulfillment impacted.
That's bad. Real-world consequences hitting physical operations, not just data.
Especially worrying in healthcare. Delays in medical device availability can have serious knock-on effects. It seems their cloud systems weren't hit, which might be why ransomware isn't confirmed, but the impact is still significant.
They seem to be doing the right things. Incident response, third-party experts, law enforcement notified.
Standard procedure for a major incident, yes. But it's another stark reminder that even large companies in critical sectors are vulnerable. We'll need to watch for more details on this one.
Definitely. Okay, and speaking of data exposure, ticket to cash, the ticket reseller.
Oh boy. Yeah, that sounds like a bad one. Exposed database.
Over 500,000 customer records, apparently, just sitting in an unprotected online database found by a researcher.
Ouch. What kind of data?
Pretty sensitive stuff. Customer inventory files, PDFs, images of tickets maybe, partial credit card data, names, emails, postal addresses.
Wow, that's not good. Just leaving that wide open online is a fundamental security failure.
The researcher, Jeremiah Fowler, reported it, and apparently it took a second attempt to get the company to lock it down.
That's also concerning. You never know how long it was open or who might have stumbled across it before the researcher did.
So, advice for anyone who might have used ticket to cash.
Keep a very close eye on your bank statements, credit card bills, credit reports. Look for any unusual activity. Basic Security 101, protect your databases.
Seriously, it's not rocket science. Okay, nearing the end here. CISA, the U.S. cybersecurity agency, put out a warning about unsophisticated attacks.
Yeah, targeting industrial control systems, ICS, SCADAI, particularly in the oil and gas sector.
It seems weird, right? Basic attacks hitting critical infrastructure.
It does sound counterintuitive, but
Right.
CISA's point is that even simple techniques can work if basic cyber hygiene is poor and systems are, frankly, exposed when they shouldn't be.
So things like weak passwords, unpatched systems, stuff connected directly to the internet.
Exactly that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And even if the attack itself is basic, the consequences can still be severe. Debasing interfaces, messing up configurations, disrupting operations, even potentially causing physical damage in some ICS scenarios.
And CISA links this to geopolitical tensions. and AI lowering the bar for attackers.
Yeah, they mentioned the current climate and how easier access to attack tools, maybe helped by AI, could be empowering less sophisticated actors to try their luck against these critical targets.
So the takeaway for critical infrastructure folks.
Back to basics. Patching, strong passwords, network segmentation, staff training. Don't neglect the fundamentals, because attackers often don't need fancy exploits if the door is unlocked.
Makes sense. And just one last thing before we wrap this ongoing tension between U.S. lawmakers and the U.K. government over encryption, specifically the order to Apple.
Ah, the Investigatory Powers Act, or IPA, notice.
Mhm.
Yeah, key U.S. House committee chairs wrote to the U.K. Home Secretary expressing pretty strong concerns.
What's their main argument?
They're worried that forcing Apple to build a way to bypass encryption, even for specific purposes like detecting child sexual abuse material, CSAM, creates what they call systemic vulnerabilities.
Meaning a backdoor for one purpose could become a backdoor for others, exploitable by criminals or hostile states.
That's the fear, that it weakens security for everyone globally, not just in the UK. They also raise issues about potential conflicts with international human rights standards and the USU Cloud Act for data sharing.
And Apple's response has been?
Well, they're challenging the order in court. And reportedly, they disabled their advanced data protection feature, which offers more comprehensive end-to-end encryption for iCloud backups in the UK because of these requirements.
So it's a really high-stakes standoff about privacy, security, and government access.
Absolutely. A fundamental debate with huge implications for how secure our digital communications and stored data can actually be. There are no easy answers here.
Wow. Okay, that was a lot to cover. So wrapping up this week's deep dive on calm coding, it's pretty clear the cyber landscape is just constantly shifting, isn't it?
Never a dull moment. From sophisticated state actors and supply chain attacks down to basic hygiene failures and these huge policy debates about encryption.
We really hope drilling down into these specific stories, the Go malware, the Magento mess, the Nvidia move, Darcula, all of it has given you some useful context and maybe, yeah, those aha moments. That's what we aim for.
And I think the big takeaway is how interconnected it all is. Open source security impacts government procurement. Mobile phishing impacts everyone. Patching failures leave critical systems vulnerable. It all ties together.
It really does. So maybe the thought to leave you with this week is thinking about your own digital world, your work, your personal life. Where's that balance point for you between keeping things secure and keeping things convenient? And based on everything we've talked about, is there one small, concrete step you could take this week to maybe nudge that balance a little more towards security?
Something to definitely ponder.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into calm coding.
Stay safe out there, and we'll talk again next week.